I worked with this one executive who had social anxiety, but he didn't call it that when we were first talking, right? He was getting some feedback that certain clients didn't want to work with him, and they just didn't really care for him, right? They didn't really like him. And he was, by the way, a nice guy. And then he said to me, that was happening, and then he said to me, and I notice my team comes to me and I give them these ideas and they don't take them and run with them. Like, I'm trying to be helpful, but I'm not having any impact. I'm not, able to do anything. And so we started to talk and really seeing that what happened was he had an idea about himself that he's not good with people and that he hates small talk. So those two ideas were shaping the way he came across, right? The way he showed up and his experience. So we began to talk about the idea of rapport and connection and where that really comes from, and how when we are just showing up, that connection and rapport is a natural thing, right? But there's a lot of training out there that'll say, okay, rapport is ask this question. They have a lot of ideas, and so people get in their head that rapport and connection is a technique, right? Or you got to do something first. But what we began to explore was, what if in a freer mind, you let go of your ideas about your personality and the fact that you hate small talk? What if you start to see that as an idea, not a truth? Something you've believed about yourself, but get curious and see if, something else is there. What started to happen was, and the thing that helped him was, he could see this idea that when he showed up, stirred up, hating small talk, trying to get right to business, there was no good feeling in him. He came across kind of cold and distant, and that's what people were responding to, right? They weren't responding to his words, they were responding to the feeling that he walked around in. So he could see that, and he started to see that if he could lean more into being comfortable in his skin and being okay, seeing the connection, he could see it's like, oh yeah, I'm like a tuning fork. And if I walk into a situation rushed, cold, impatient, of course that's what people. But if he could find his way to saying, yeah, what if I just show up with a freer mind and less on my mind and going for connection and rapport. And it was really interesting because that alone started to give him a place to explore. And it was funny because, of course, he was like, well, okay, so do you have like a breathing technique that I do for that? Do you have something? And I was like, no. No, I just want you to experiment. I want you to see, I want you to be willing to lay down the idea that you're not good at it, that you hate it. Lay down the idea that you think you're this fixed personality, and just see what you see. And it was amazing because he got it. He heard something and he got it, and he started to experiment with it. And when we would have our coaching calls, he'd say, yeah, I was with one of my team and we had this really great conversation. And then he even one day was traveling out of town and he sent me a text saying, I just had the best meeting with a client and we talked about golf. It was like these things that to him were revolutionary, right? To the rest of us are like, okay. But what happened is that small thing helped him see there was something else at play. There's something else at play in life. There's something else at play in the way we interact, in the way we show up, in our ability to connect with other people, that, using the terminology for today, the source of connection, the source of rapport, isn't what's coming out of our mouth, right? It's not what our heads are doing. There's something that's already alive and available to us when we naturally just thought falls away. You feel more connected. You feel rapport. As George was saying earlier, you're listening different. Or Aaron said there's a richness to the quality of life and exchange. So the idea that really, and with this individual, and for me too, was, what if we aren't this kind of fixed set thing, a fixed set personality? That, really we've just kind of moved through life trying to make sense of ourselves and the world, so we drew a bunch of conclusions. And we put stakes in the ground about who we thought we were and what we thought we were good at and what we thought worked. And what we're inviting in this understanding is, what if you have way more capability than you realize? What if you have this innate built-in resource that's available to you to give you helpful thinking, fresh thought, fresh experiences, and you don't have to be anything different? You don't have to effort at it like you might think you do.